Elsie Silver, her spice is something else. So much so that it got me pregnant. Hey everyone, I'm Tammy.
I'm Morgan.
And welcome to our channel.
Today we're going to talk about our top 10 books of 2024.
Okay, my number 10 is Heartless Hunter by Kristen Zillarelli. This is a witch in Witch Hunter, enemies to lovers romantasy. It was definitely a very popular book last year, and then the next in the series, number 2, comes out this year, which I'm really excited about. And I'm a sucker for enemies to lovers. So this book was just right up my alley. I love also fantasy, so throw that in there, and it was just the perfect combination for a book for me.
All right, so my number 10 is The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson. I love when horror has something to say, like when it's got some kind of social commentary on it. And this was a book about this puritanical society and the horrors of men using religion to control women. And so that's right up my alley. I love that kind of stuff.
Not in reality.
Not in reality.
I like
no.
to read about it.
Yes, yeah. I love when, obviously that's something that's happened and continues to happen, unfortunately. So I like that this book touched on the horrors of that and how horrific that can be. And I just thought it was a really great story. And I guess there's another one coming out, so I'm really excited to read that.
Butcher and Blackbird by Brynne Weaver. This is my first dabble in dark romance. And this is party elementary dark romance. I know there's so much darker stuff out there, but these are 2 vigilante serial killers that fall in love and continue their little escapades that they do. And it definitely has some gross, gory parts. And I'm not a massive gore fan, but I did really love the romance aspect of it. And it is very much like Dexter, which was one of my favorite shows when it was on. So I really loved that one.
Number 9 is All You Have to Do Is Call by Carrie Mayer. This was part of a little buddy read that we did. And it is about the Janes, which was an actual group of women in the 70s, the 60s and 70s.
Early 70s.
That they offered abortions to women, even though it was illegal. They had their own little abortion clinic, and they helped a lot of women. And it's just about a few different women during that time and how they all are going through different times in their lives and different whether they want to have kids or they need an abortion and things like that. And it's just a beautiful story about women and their resiliency and how we can work together to support each other.
My number 8 is A Foxglove by Adeline Grace. This is the second book in the series. Does it have a name? No, maybe the Belladonna series. I'm not sure if this has a different type of name for it. I really loved the love story in this one. Again, romantasy girly, so any of that kind of stuff is right up my alley. I thought it had a unique magic system, and anything Adeline Grace writes, I will read.
Okay, my number 8 is The Dream Daughter by Diane Chamberlain. This book caught me off guard. It is a historical fiction / light sci-fi. And I haven't read a lot of sci-fi. I've barely read anything sci-fi, honestly. So I didn't think that I would like this that much. But it is about a woman who lives in the 1970s, and she becomes pregnant and finds out that her baby needs an operation. But we don't have the technology to perform that operation in the 1970s. So she time travels to the early 2000s so that her baby can have this operation. And I read this while I was pregnant. And I cried so much. It's a really beautiful story. It is all about how far you will go for your children and I just loved it.
Right, number 7 is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. So this is another romantasy and is following 2 journalists, like first-year journalists, as they enter this war, and they're on the front lines writing for their respective newspaper, and they are really in the thick of this war between 2 different gods. And the war between the 2 gods is really interesting because it's about a woman and a man god, and they used to be together, and their love story is really beautiful. It is an duology, so it's the second one out as well, and I absolutely loved it.
My number 7 is The Book of Lost Names by Kristen Harmel. This is a World War II historical fiction about a woman who becomes involved with a group of people who are trying to help children escape the French occupied France, and they're trying to make it to where these kids are not losing their identities because they're giving them new names so that they can cross into other countries and be safe, but they don't want them to not be able to contact their family once all of this is over, and so they have this book of lost names, and it is just such a good story. I mean, can you read a World War II fiction and not cry? Because I don't think I can.
Number 6 is Wild Eyes by Elsie Silver. So as you come to know me, you will know that I love Elsie Silver. She is like my favorite author. And this one is in her second series, or no, I guess her third series, the Rose Hill series. And it is the second book in that series. But they all can be read standalone, but in the universe, they all kind of overlap, which is really cool. And this one was about like this rugged mountain man, which they kind of all are, and like a singer who needs to like get away from the like something goes down and she needs to get away from Hollywood and moves out to this ranch and just falls in love, and he's a single dad too, so I love a single dad trope. And if you haven't read anything Elsie Silver, her spice is something else. So much so that it got me pregnant.
Finally,
I can say that now.
Okay, my number 6 is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I had this on my TBR for forever, and I know like everybody was talking about it, and I'm like the last person to read it. I'd even recommended this to people before I'd even read it, so
she just knew she was gonna love it.
Yeah, I just knew it apparently. But this follows Evelyn Hugo, who's like a Hollywood icon, and the 7 husbands that she was with, and which person was her real love. You know, it's an interview style, which I think Taylor Jenkins Reid just like really excels with, because I loved Daisy Jones and the Six, and I think she's just really good at writing books like this. It feels like you're watching an E! True Hollywood story, and it's just so fun, and the characters feel so real. Like, it's hard to believe that this is fiction. So, I highly recommend if you're one of the other people who have not read this.
All right, kind of like what Morgan said, my number 5 is All You Have to Do Is Call by Carrie Mayer. This was... I was in a reading slump for a while towards the end of 2024, and this one pushed me back into it. I listened to this book, pushed me back into reading, and I just thought it was so great. We are pretty vocal on other apps on where we stand on some things, and abortion is one of those things that I feel very strongly about, and it really broke my heart, like seeing what these women had to go through in the 70s and what they fought for us to be able to have the right for our bodily autonomy, and just made me think about what we could be going through in this near future, and like wanting me, like I don't know, this like wanted me to like get involved. I'm like, how do I, if this comes again, get involved into something like this, into like helping women? And like Morgan said, it was telling these stories of different women. I mean, there's a woman in there that like is very much, she's part of the Catholic Church and very anti-abortion, and just her like kind of changing. And really, I did not like her character throughout the entire book. I was like, she better have some heck of an arc from where she is, and she did, because, and it is sad, a lot of the times it has to affect someone you know in order for people to change their opinions. But it just, and then there's mothers, there's all these women that are in different walks of life that are helping other women that they don't know, these Janes, and really all you had to do was call, and there was not going to be any questions asked. And there was a lot of sensitivity when it came to it, because at the time it was only men performing it, and it was hard. They were judging women. It was this secretive thing. They didn't really care about your situation, whereas like the Janes and the women like did care about what you were going through, talking to you about it, and whether you did want to keep the baby after you had gone through your initial interview or you didn't. There was no judgment. And it was just such a fantastic book.
Yeah, it was very much highlighting how every woman goes through a different experience with it, and how even one of the women that was performing the procedure, she was pregnant. And so like you can believe in that and support other women and their choice, and still be making a different choice for yourself.
Yeah, because that's what it all comes down to, is a choice. You have the choice to do what you want with your body. Or you should.
Yeah, and this book doesn't have a lot of reviews on any of the
It's actually pretty
websites.
new. I think it came out either in 2024 or at the end of 2023.
Okay.
So it is a relatively new book.
But yeah, we definitely recommend it. It's really good. Okay, Tammy got me on the Elsie Silver train. And, okay, so I still need to finish the series, but this book, wow. I mean, she said, the spice just, wow. The Spice, this is a single dad romance, and I did not know that was gonna do anything for me, but apparently it does. And it's funny because I remember Tammy being like, cowboys, and I was like, I don't know, cowboys, that doesn't really sound like me, and now I'm like, cowboys.
Powerless by Lauren Roberts. I cannot wait for the technically the fourth, but the third book in this series to come out. I actually tandem read this with Powerful, and I think that's the way to do it if you have not read this book, because it just makes the whole book more impactful. But it is very much similar to the Hunger Games in that kind of vibe, where they're like these districts kind of in a way. I mean, there's like poor ones and this kind of stuff, and then there's this bigger kingdom, and it's also like a love triangle between two brothers. So I mean, who doesn't love a love triangle as well? Romanticy, and tandem reading it with Powerful like broke my heart at the end. I was crying, so kind of similar to Morgan. If you can make me cry, you're gonna end up in one of my favorite ones. And the second book in this series, Reckless, left it on such a cliffhanger, so I cannot wait for, I think Fearless is what the third one is called. Cannot wait to see where it goes from there.
Well, and also, like, books don't make Tammy cry very often.
No.
So, when I saw that Tammy cried from this book, I was like, oh.
It's on her TBR. It's been on your TBR for a while.
It is. It's been on my TBR for a while. Is Wayward by Amelia Hart. This book it follows 3 different women within the same, like, ancestral line, I guess, across, like, a couple hundred years. One of the women is, like, being accused as a witch in the 1600s. Another woman is, she's, like, kind of growing up during World War II. And then the third woman is in 2019, and she's trying to escape from an abusive partner. So you should definitely check your trigger warnings with this book. But it really, really talks about how dangerous men can be towards women. And I just found it such a powerful story. It is not an easy read. say that. Like, Tammy DNF'd it. It was not for her.
I could not get through it. I got too much anxiety.
But the message of the story and just seeing the resiliency of these women, I just thought it was so powerful and so beautiful.
Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmis. This was definitely, we talked about this book ad nauseum last year, like on a different app. And it was so good. It follows Elizabeth Zott. This is in the 60s, I think. So she is a chemist. So it talks about her being a woman in STEM in the 60s and how difficult that is, not being acknowledged for the work that you're doing. And then she winds up pregnant and then kind of has to change course because now she is a mother and starts doing a cooking show that leads into a TV show. And she talks about how cooking is chemistry. And she is just one of those like fictional women characters that I like wish was a real person. Like we talked about Evelyn Hugo. Like I wish there was Elizabeth Zott existed. So like somewhere that, our daughters can like look up to. And I absolutely loved this book. I loved how it ended, how it brought everything back together. It made me frustrated. And so glad that I wasn't a woman in the 60s or like any time other than the time I was born in, because I would have been burned at the stake for sure.
A Million Junes by Emily Henry. This is a YA Romeo and Juliet retelling. And it's so much more than that. It's like magical realism. It has a message about generational trauma, and it is just an incredible story. It's so much more than just like a little romance between some high schoolers. I mean, the main character really dives deep into her family's past and why things are the way they are, and they are supposed to have some kind of like magical land that they live on, and she really kind of discovers the magic behind all of it, and I highly recommend it. It's incredible.
Maybe I'll give that a try by Emily Henry.
I think that would be a very different kind of Emily Henry to read.
Yeah. A Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. So we both discovered Abby last year, and another one that anything she writes, I will read.
Same.
She makes you fall in love with every character, and just... Does she do any spice? I think it's not as spicy as Elsie Silver. So if you're not that much into spice, definitely check this one out. This is about a doctor and a small town guy and her getting stranded somewhere and him helping her. And she's also going through a divorce at the time. And it is part of a series, but again, you can, much like Elsie's, you can read this by itself. But I definitely encourage you to, like, if you want to get into the series, to read them in order, because it will kind of shock you when you get to the third book in the series so far, of like where everybody connects. And then the fourth book comes out here in like April. I cannot wait. What's it called?
Say You'll Remember Me.
Say You'll Remember Me. Yes, and if you haven't figured out, we're also Swifties.
Yes.
So I feel like in every book she mentions Taylor Swift at some point in it. I think like they're listening to Taylor Swift or they comment on it. So this is definitely such a good one and a great introduction to Abby Jimenez.
Yeah. Okay, I went back and forth of whether or not this was my number 1 or number 2, and I still I don't know. Right now it's going to be my number 2, but I've talked about this book so much, and it's Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmis. Tammy pretty much told you everything about this book, but this is my favorite main character I've ever read. Elizabeth Zott is such a powerful, take no shit woman, and like she said, like she's such a great example that I wish she was real so that we could point to her for our daughters and be like, hey, like this is someone to look up to, because she just really is an incredible person. She is so intelligent, and she doesn't let the men in this story walk all over her, no matter how hard they try. The romance in this is great.
It's heartbreaking.
Yes, and like all of the characters too, like the side characters, you just care so much for everybody in this book. So, highly recommend. And it wasn't something that I thought I would be interested in. I was kind of like chemistry, cooking, like whatever. But wow, I've talked about this book over and over and over again. It really has made an impact on me.
Right, my number one of 2024 is Heartless by Elsie Silver. This, I don't know. I think this might be too much TMI, but my reread of this might have actually been the one that got me pregnant. It was definitely her, and I think it was the reread. So that tells you something. Even on the second read, it still hits the same. This you talked about a little bit, but it's a single dad, and so it's the second book in her 5-book series, and it's the best friend from the female main character in the first book. So that universe all overlaps. This is the Chestnut series, and it's so good. Willa, who is the female main character, is like so strong. She doesn't take anyone's crap, and she's so funny too. And the whole Eaton family too, you kind of, as you go through the series, like really fall in love with all of the brothers, and it follows each of the brothers, and it's just, I don't know, there's not enough time in the world to talk about how much I love this book. It'll probably one of those books that I like reread every year. I even have it like bookmarked to like a spicy scene. So if I just want to go to that scene, I can, because it's just that good. But it's not just spice too, because there are a lot. I did just read one that was just straight spice. There was absolutely no plot. But I knew that going into it, where there is like so much plot, because I mean, it's like 60% of the way through before you actually get to any type of spice. And I don't know, the back and forth, the banter, the will they, won't they, is just like so great.
It definitely has a good build up.
Yes, the build up, that's the word I'm looking for, is so good. So if you haven't read any Elsie Silver, I definitely recommend the Chestnut series. Start with Flawless. Every single Elsie Silver book is on KU, so if you have that, great way to be able to read through it. And again, not enough time or words to talk about how much I love this book.
You have to be very careful during the rereads.
Yes, very, very careful, for sure.
All right, my number one book of 2024. I'm not a romance girly, and this year I guess I just became one or something.
I think it's because we started doing this, so you started reading more romance.
Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. This is the second book after the Part of Your World book that Tammy talked about. And I am not really a annotator or anything like that, but this is a lot of annotation for me, unless it's like a nonfiction. This book is about two doctors, and one of the female doctor is up for this big promotion, and then this guy comes in and he's kind of like threatening that promotion. And they start writing letters to each other, and there's some like fake dating, and you come to find out that this male doctor he's not out for her and her job. He's just the sweetest cinnamon roll of a person, and he has anxiety, and it has great anxiety representation for me personally, for my experience with anxiety, and it just meant so much to me to read kind of his thought process and what he went through, because it was a lot of the things that I feel. And so I was reading this when I was postpartum with my baby, and I would be feeding her in the middle of the night and reading this book on my Kindle, and I would just feel so seen by this book and this character. And it was just incredible how much she is just really makes you care so much about the characters. And I've never been seen in a book like this before. So.
Yeah, I love that book too in the series. And as someone that doesn't deal with anxiety but loves someone that does, it definitely showed me a whole other side and like understanding to what it goes through, just in like the exhaustion with going to some sort of social gathering, and like how that can really deplete someone's battery, and just being in the mind. And I don't know how Abby does it. Like I really don't. I don't
either.
she's just fantastic.
She is incredible. So we definitely recommend these. And let us know what some of your top favorite books of the year were. 2024 was a pretty good reading year for us.
It was a pretty good reading year. So excited what 2025 is going to bring.
Yeah.